My name is Patricia E. Rader, and I am 34 years old. For most of my life, I was the one people forgot to mention. Not out of cruelty exactly, but out of habit. At every family dinner, every holiday, every birthday party, the spotlight landed naturally on my sister. She didn't have to demand it. It just found her. She was the golden girl, the one my mom talked about like a highlight reel that never ended. Cheerleader in high school. Straight A student. Married young to a man who owned a boat and posted sunlit photos of their matching golden retrievers. Her life looked good framed in pictures, and that was enough. And then there was me, quiet Patricia, the one who moved out early and didn't come home much, the one relatives asked about vaguely, if they remembered at all. At Thanksgiving, I was the one setting up Wi-Fi routers, while my sister unwrapped gift bags filled with perfume and scarves that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. An uncle once asked if I was still doing computer stuff. An aunt forgot my birthday 2 years in a row. I didn't correct anyone. I told myself I didn't need attention. Or at least that's what I learned to say out loud. After college, I took an entry-level job in IT support. It was exhausting, thankless, and invisible, which somehow felt fitting. I answered tickets all day, solved problems no one wanted to think about, and went home to a tiny apartment where my screens took up more space than my furniture. At night, when most people were winding down, I was teaching myself coding languages, building apps, freelancing quietly, taking overseas calls at odd hours. It wasn't glamorous. I didn't post about it. Nobody in my family asked what I did anyway. Once, when I tried to explain a new role I'd earned, my dad cut me off mid-sentence to ask my sister about a yoga retreat in Sedona. That new role paid me more in bonuses than my sister's husband made all year. I didn't say a word. I learned early that success didn't count unless it was visible enough to be bragged about. So I built my life in silence. Promotions came. Recruiters followed. I moved from support to systems architecture, then product management, then head of a division at a cybersecurity firm. I relocated to New York alone and leased a penthouse I never mentioned to anyone. I traveled to Singapore for work, London for conferences. I bought a car in cash and let my family believe I still lived in a cramped studio in Queens. They didn't care, so I didn't bother correcting them. Then my grandmother turned 80. There was no skipping that. I flew in on a red-eye, didn't announce myself, just showed up at the country club in a black dress and heels I usually reserve for boardrooms. My mom blinked twice when she saw me, like she was trying to place a face she recognized but didn't fully register. My sister hugged me a little too long, like she was checking for signs of something unnatural, maybe surgery or sudden wealth. Champagne was poured. Conversations buzzed. We were standing near the table when my grandmother, sharp as ever, turned to me and asked where I lived now. I hadn't even opened my mouth when my mom jumped in, waving a hand, talking about Brooklyn or Hoboken, somewhere vague and dismissible. I smiled, waited for her to finish, then said calmly, "Just a little penthouse overlooking Central Park." The room went dead. My sister spit her champagne onto her plate. My mom's face drained of color like she'd seen a ghost. My uncle let out a low whistle and muttered, "Well, well, well." And just like that, I stopped being invisible. Heads turned, questions formed. Eyes stayed on me longer than they ever had before. They finally saw me. I didn't know yet that being seen would cost me far more than being ignored ever did. After that night at the country club, something shifted in a way that felt almost physical, like the air had been rearranged and everyone was breathing differently around me. The woman who once asked me to refill the water pitcher mid-dinner now leaned in to hear every word I said. My uncle, who used to pat my head like I was a kid tagging along, suddenly wanted to talk about investments and markets. My mom, who once told neighbors I worked with computers or something, started introducing me as her daughter, who ran cybersecurity for global finance companies. It wasn't even technically true, but I didn't bother correcting her. I was still trying to understand what was happening. My sister reached out the next morning, her message overflowing with exclamation points and warmth that felt a little too rehearsed. She asked if I was free to grab coffee before I flew back to New York, said she missed me, said it had been too long. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. The last time we'd spoken properly, she'd told me she didn't have time to deal with my emotional distance when I skipped her gender reveal party, the one I hadn't even been invited to. Still, I agreed. Hope is stubborn like that. We met at a cafe near my hotel, sunlight pouring in through the windows like it was trying to soften the edges of the conversation. She didn't waste time. She launched straight into how hard life had been lately. Her husband's new startup was struggling. The baby wasn't sleeping. She was exhausted. She mentioned 3 times how expensive daycare had become, each time glancing at me like she was waiting to see if I'd react. I nodded, listened, sipped my coffee. Then she tilted her head and said, almost casually, "You're lucky you don't have to worry about money anymore." It wasn't a question. It was a statement, one that settled between us and stayed there. From that moment on, everything snowballed. Suddenly, everyone had a reason to call. My sister needed help covering the cost of a new SUV, something about safety features and financing delays. My mom called about the kitchen renovation she'd been dreaming about for years. So close to finally happening, she just needed a little push to get it over the finish line. My dad called about his knee surgery, the insurance gap he didn't want to talk about, the kind of thing he said he hated asking for but somehow still expected me to solve. I said yes every time. Not because I didn't see what was happening, but because I wanted it to be something else. I wanted to believe they'd changed, that they cared, that finally, after years of being a side character in my own family, I was being seen and appreciated for who I was. In a way, I was. We had dinners again. Group chats that once had just my sister and my parents suddenly included me, my name lighting up their phones. My mom called me her lifesaver. My dad asked if I'd teach him about crypto, which would have been funny if it wasn't so revealing. For a while, it worked. I floated on the illusion that my family finally loved me back. I didn't track the money. I didn't count the transfers. I didn't question how quickly gratitude turned into expectation. I told myself this was what closeness felt like. Then my grandmother called. She never called me unless something was wrong. She'd always been sharp, observant, the only one in the family who never made me feel small. That day her voice was quiet, not frail, just hesitant. She asked if I had a moment to talk, then paused, like she was bracing herself. "Patricia," she said, "I need to tell you something, and I don't think you're going to like it." She told me she'd overheard a conversation in my parents' backyard after a barbecue. My mom, my dad, and my sister, laughing together. Talking about me, about how I'd finally become useful, about how it was about time I paid back all those years of doing nothing, about how they should keep me close, at least until the kitchen was done and the SUVs were paid off. She said my sister laughed and added, "Patricia doesn't even notice. She thinks we care." My chest burned. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Not really. I think I'd always known, somewhere deep down, but hearing it out loud stripped away the last excuse I'd been clinging to. I thanked my grandmother, told her I'd call her later, and hung up. I sat on my couch that night, high above Central Park, the city lights spread out beneath me like 1,000 separate lives, and stared out the window until the glass went cold under my hand. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. Something in me went very quiet, like a switch flipping off. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I smiled. I answered calls. I stayed warm and present. I wanted to see how far it would go now that I knew the truth. And once I stopped sending money without explanation, I waited to see what they noticed first. They didn't notice the absence of me. They noticed the absence of my money. The first thing I learned after I stopped sending money was how quiet exploitation can be when it thinks it's still winning. No one called to ask if I was okay. No one checked in to see if work had gotten overwhelming or if New York was wearing me down. The tone stayed the same. Warm, familiar, performative. My sister still sent photos of the baby. My mom still forwarded cabinet samples. My dad still called to catch up. The only thing missing was the transfers, and I watched carefully to see how long it would take before that absence became uncomfortable. It didn't take long. My sister stopped talking about her day and started talking about expenses. Not asking, just narrating. Daycare had raised their rates again. The SUV payment was brutal this month. Her husband's startup needed just a little push to get over the hump. Each sentence hovered, unfinished, like she expected me to complete it. My mom did the same thing in her own way. She never directly asked for money anymore. She'd send photos of countertops, flooring samples, the kind of glossy pictures meant to spark desire, then follow up with something like, "Isn't it crazy how expensive materials are now?" Or, "We want to do it while we're still healthy enough to enjoy it." My dad was subtler. He'd talk about friends who retired early, who traveled without worrying about medical bills, then laugh and say, "Must be nice." Before, I would have filled the gap. I would have offered help before anyone had to ask. This time, I didn't. I kept everything else the same. Same availability, same tone, same polite interest. I just didn't send money. I wanted to know whether they missed me or what I provided. The answer came quietly, in the form of irritation disguised as confusion. My sister started taking longer to reply. My mom's messages grew shorter, less affectionate. My dad's calls became infrequent, then stopped altogether. Then Christmas approached. Suddenly, everyone wanted togetherness again. My mom insisted I come early this year, said it had been too long since we'd all been together properly. My sister said the baby needed to see her aunt more. My dad said it wouldn't feel right without me there. I booked the flight, not because I believed them, but because I wanted to end this chapter cleanly, without wondering what would have happened if I'd stayed away. When I arrived, everything was perfect on the surface. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Music played softly. My mom hugged me longer than usual. My sister touched my arm when she talked, like she was proving closeness. My dad poured me a drink and asked about New York, about my view, about my job. His eyes bright with curiosity that felt a little too strategic. They were performing, all of them, and for the first time, I could see the performance clearly. Dinner was loud and cheerful. Gifts were exchanged. Mine were extravagant, like always, and I noticed how no one hesitated to take them anymore. That used to bother me. This time, it didn't. After dessert, my mom suggested coffee in the living room. Everyone migrated there, settling into familiar spots. My sister kicked her feet up. My dad loosened his collar. It felt like the end of a long play, the moment when actors relax because the audience is still applauding. That's when I spoke. I asked my sister if she remembered the barbecue a few months back, the one at my parents' place. I asked if she remembered standing in the backyard with Mom and Dad after everyone else went inside. She froze. Not dramatically, just enough. My mom said my name in that warning tone she's always used when she thinks she can still control the narrative. My dad stared straight ahead, suddenly fascinated by the television. I told them I knew what they said. I didn't repeat the words. I didn't need to. Their faces told me everything. My mom started talking immediately, explaining, backtracking, saying things about jokes being taken out of context, about stress, about families saying things they don't mean. I let her talk until the room felt smaller, heavier. Then I told them I understood exactly what our relationship had been, that I wasn't angry anymore, just finished. I said I didn't want to be the solution to their problems or the funding source for their plans. My sister tried to interrupt. I didn't stop her. I stood up, put my coat on, and said I was leaving. I told them not to call me to fix things, not to apologize, not to explain. I said I'd already made my decision. As I opened the door, my mom said my name again, softer this time, almost pleading. I didn't turn around. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. My grandmother was already there, standing on the porch like she'd been waiting. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say she was proud. She just nodded once and got into the car with me. We drove away in silence, and for the first time since that night at her birthday party, I didn't feel like I was bracing for the next disappointment. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. I expected anger after that night, accusations, tearful voicemails, something loud and dramatic that would confirm I'd done the right thing by walking away. Instead, I got nothing. No calls, no texts, no emails pretending to check in, just silence, clean and complete, like I'd been erased from the family group chat without anyone bothering to announce it. At first, the quiet made me uneasy. I kept checking my phone out of habit, half expecting a message that would pull me back into the old pattern. Nothing came. Days passed, then weeks. My grandmother stayed in touch, of course. She called every few days, never asking me to reconsider, never pushing me to explain myself again. She talked about the weather, about the beach near her place, about the book she was reading. She let the silence be what it was. I went back to New York and threw myself into work. The city helped. It doesn't care about your family drama. Meetings still started on time. Deadlines still existed. Problems still needed solving. For the first time in a long while, my focus wasn't split between my own life and managing everyone else's expectations. I didn't realize how much mental space they'd been occupying until it was suddenly free. 2 weeks later, something strange happened. I got a call from a recruiter I didn't recognize. His voice was energetic, a little too polished. He said he had a client looking for someone to lead a new cybersecurity division. He said my name had come up through a professional network. He mentioned a consulting firm I'd never heard of and casually referred to me as a silent partner. I told him he had the wrong person and hung up, but the call stayed with me. An hour later, curiosity turned into unease. I started digging. It didn't take long to find it. A professional profile had been created using my full name, photo, and job history, padded with exaggerated titles and fake endorsements. It looked just convincing enough to pass at a glance. The profile was linked to a new consulting firm with a sleek website and a promise to leverage elite cybersecurity leadership for family-driven enterprises. My name was listed as a partner. I felt my stomach drop. I called the number on the site. My dad answered. I didn't even say hello. I asked him what he thought he was doing. He stammered, words tripping over each other, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that he was just trying to help build something for the family, that he thought leveraging our collective success would benefit everyone. I hung up before he could finish. 10 minutes later, my sister called. She swore she had nothing to do with it, then immediately contradicted herself by saying, "You don't understand how much we needed this." That was the moment it clicked. They weren't just after my money anymore. They wanted my name, my reputation. They wanted to wear my success like a costume and walk around in it, pretending they'd built something too. I contacted my lawyer that night. The cease and desist went out immediately. The fake profiles were taken down. The website disappeared. 2 investors who'd already reached out had to be corrected before real damage was done. It could have ruined me, not just financially, but professionally. When I called my grandmother afterward, pacing my apartment with my heart still racing, she didn't sound surprised. She said quietly, "I warned you, Patricia. They don't love people. They love what people can give them." That was the moment I stopped hoping for redemption. I changed everything. New number, new accounts, locked down my digital presence until it was airtight. I went fully quiet, not out of fear, but out of resolve. I wasn't going to let them find another angle. A few weeks later, a handwritten letter arrived with no return address. Inside was an apology that never quite said sorry, wrapped in explanations about fear and insecurity. Taped to the bottom was an old photo of me at 12, standing at my grandmother's kitchen counter, pulling apart a broken radio with a screwdriver while the rest of the family laughed in the background. My mom had taken that picture. I read it twice, folded it carefully, and put it away. I didn't respond. It felt like a souvenir from a life I didn't live anymore. I thought that would be the end. It wasn't. I didn't expect anything else after that letter. No calls, no messages, no dramatic attempts to pull me back in. For a while, that's exactly what I got. Silence. Not the tense silence that waits to explode, but a flat, empty one, like a room that's finally been aired out. I figured they were licking their wounds, telling their version of the story to whoever would listen, and moving on. I let them. I sold the penthouse a few months later, not because I couldn't afford it, but because I didn't want my life to revolve around something that had become symbolic of everything they tried to take from me. I bought an old brownstone in Brooklyn and gutted it completely. Walls came down, floors were redone. Every decision was mine. I built something solid, not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, but because I wanted to live inside something that felt earned, not borrowed or observed. Work stayed steady. I kept leading my team, kept building systems most people will never see, but rely on every day. I started mentoring younger women in tech, quietly, one-on-one. No panels, no press, just coffee meetings and honest conversations about how to negotiate salaries, how to walk away from jobs that don't value you, how to stop confusing visibility with worth. Somewhere along the way, I stopped checking my email at midnight. I started taking weekends off. I went to therapy. I learned to cook more than one decent meal. I adopted a rescue dog with one ear and a bad attitude and named him Ghost because that's what I'd become to my family. My grandmother visited often. She never asked if I planned to go back or reconcile. One afternoon, sitting on the porch while Ghost barked at pigeons, I finally asked her if she was disappointed in me for cutting them off. She didn't hesitate. She said, "You gave them more chances than they deserved. That's not failure. That's grace." For the first time, I believed her. About a year passed. Then I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. It was my cousin Megan. We hadn't spoken in years. She sounded nervous, careful, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to call. She said she didn't want anything, no money, no favors. She just thought I should know that things back home were different. According to her, my dad had shut down the fake consulting idea months ago. My mom had started volunteering at a local shelter. My sister had quietly gone back to school, community college, psychology, no announcements, no photos, just change. Megan said my name still came up sometimes, that my mom cried occasionally, not in public, not to guilt anyone, but privately, that my grandmother never let them rewrite the story. She told people the truth, the version I lived through, not the one they wanted remembered. I didn't call back. I didn't reach out. Some changes aren't invitations. They're just proof that growth is possible, even if it comes too late to matter to the relationship that was lost. One evening, while cleaning out an old box, I found that photo again. Me at 12, focused on a broken radio, while the rest of the family laughed behind me. I looked at her for a long time. That girl wasn't invisible. She wasn't broken. She was just busy building something, while everyone else was looking the other way. I didn't burn the photo. I didn't frame it either. I put it back where it was. Not as an anchor, but as evidence. It's been over a year now. No contact, no surprises, no chaos. The silence that used to scare me now feels like space, like room to breathe. My life is full in a way it never was when I was chasing approval. I don't say yes out of fear anymore. I choose what deserves me. They taught me a lot, even if they never meant to. They taught me what happens when love is conditional, when success is seen as something to extract instead of celebrate. And they taught me the most important thing of all. Sometimes walking away isn't the end of a story. It's the moment it finally becomes your own.